We're going to talk about lifting with a prolapse. And this is always a huge question for a lot of women is what should they and shouldn't they be doing in terms of lifting. But first, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my new videos. So big questions that we ask are, can you lift with a prolapse? How much weight can you lift? And then how should you lift with a prolapse? The first thing I'm going to say is that these are all very hard questions to answer properly because it very much depends. So the answer to the question, can you lift, is obviously yes. Of course you can lift with a prolapse. It all is going to be very dependent on your technique. Somebody could lift something that's 2 pounds, and if they're doing it improperly when it comes to your pelvic floor, that could be putting pressure down on their prolapse. Another person could be lifting something that's 30 pounds, but if they're doing it properly in terms of their pressure management and in terms of engaging their core and pelvic floor muscles properly, they might be able to do that with a worse prolapse and still have no problems doing it. And so that kind of goes into my next question is how much weight can you lift? And again, that's very dependent. And we're going to talk about how exactly we need to be engaging that core and engaging that pelvic floor to be able to do these properly. There's actually research that showed girls who lifted heavier stuff in the gym, girls that bench press heavier, girls that squatted heavier, actually had less instances of prolapse versus girls that don't lift at all. We often think, heavy lifting is going to be definitely contributing to prolapse, and that kind of proves that that's not the case. Heavy lifting can contribute to prolapse, again, if you're not doing it properly. And that's going to be the real key through this video, is the proper technique for lifting. Now, to answer the how much weight can you lift is going to be very much dependent on your symptoms. If you know that you have a prolapse, but I can lift 10 pounds and I don't have any symptoms from it, symptoms being I feel bulging, I feel that heaviness, I feel, the golf ball sensation between my legs, or I'm leaking while I do it, that's too heavy for you. If you can lift something and not have any symptoms from your prolapse for lifting that, it's fine, right? If you're not having any symptoms, if you're not having any discomfort, any worsening symptoms at all, it's not causing any danger to you. Now, that being said, it's still really important that we make sure that your technique is proper. Over time, things can still put more pressure, cause more issues. So let's get to the point of how should we lift. So this is going to be really important for anybody lifting anything, a pencil off the ground, a pan out of the cupboard, a kid up into a car seat, a grandkid up, our purse, firewood, pulling wagons. It doesn't really matter what that force is contributing to. What matters is how we're doing it. So let's first talk a little bit about our inner core, because our pelvic floor works in tandem with our inner core, and that's how we're going to be lifting things properly. So I'm going to stand sideways for you here. Our inner core is made up of 4 muscles. So our pelvic floor is a bowl of muscles that sits in the bottom here. We also have our diaphragm, so that's our breathing muscle, and it sits across here. Now your diaphragm and your pelvic floor are the only 2 muscles that are going through your body, and those 2 muscles are supposed to work together as a team. When one rises, the other rises. As one lowers, the other lowers. Now the other muscle that's really important here is our abdominal muscle, called our transverse abdominal muscle, and it wraps around this way all the way from front to back. When it's working, its job is to pull our belly in. So if I'm going to activate my transverse abdominis, I'm pulling my belly in like I'm sucking into a tight pair of pants. Now, the way that those muscles are supposed to work in coordination with each other is when we add load to our body, aka if I go to bed down to pick something up or lift something, our body should be exhaling, so breathing out. Our lower abdominal should activate, our pelvic floor should activate. So basically our diaphragm lifts up to breathe out, our pelvic floor lifts up to support our organs, our transverse abdominal muscle contracts to support our spine and our pelvis. And so basically we've got this brace going on that supports our spine and our pelvis as we're lifting. If you're not doing that, what our body ends up doing instead is it ends up pushing down. So your body wants to find stability somehow. And so if we're not bracing in, stabilizing it that way, it's finding stability by actually bearing down through your pelvis. And this is putting pressure down on your pelvic floor, pushing down on that prolapse. And that's what can cause further bulging, further heaviness, further golf ball, further leaking sensation is when we're pushing down this way. So we want to make sure that we're lifting as we're lifting, essentially. And so adding that exhale, intra-abdominal, transverse abdominal muscle contraction, that's also going to help to brace that area. So if I'm to demonstrate this for you, I'm going to lift up my stool here up off the ground. I want to do it with an exhale, a lift of my pelvic floor. So I'm going to think about lifting a marble up into my pelvic floor, or lifting a marble up into my vagina. Or you can think about it, what muscle would you use to stop your flow of pee if you were peeing on the toilet? So you're going to breathe out and try to lift your marble up at the same time as you lift. Okay. So I want you to stand up and bend down. Even if you don't have anything to lift, do the motion. As you stand, you're going to lift your marble. Breathe out. So breathe out like you're blowing out some birthday candles. Lift your marble up. What you should also notice is that your belly, as you lift your marble, should pull in gently. And so if it's not doing that, you might want to give it a little bit of an extra suck in at the same time. So I breathe out, lift my marble, make sure my belly's pulling in. Okay, if the breath out, if it's too much to think about initially, at the very least, I want you to think about lifting your marble, pulling your belly in as you lift. Okay, you feel it kind of brace through that area. If you keep your feet closer together and lift, okay, that'll actually take a little bit less, take more pressure off of your pelvic floor. You'll notice that when your feet are wider, it's actually harder for your pelvic floor to contract. And then you do want to make sure you're doing proper form. So I don't want to be lifting when I'm hunched over like this. I'm going to think about hinging at my hips a little bit more, sticking my bum out, and lifting up that way. Okay? So always think, blow out your candles. As you go to lift something, make sure that that pelvic floor and transverse abdominal muscle are contracting at the same time for you. This is a great thing to practice as an exercise, during a squat. Obviously a squat will help to simulate the same motion that we do as we lift up. So as you lift out of your squat, practice doing that. Breathe out, lifting your marble up. Standing up and down out of a chair, another great way. As you stand, so as you rise, again, we want to lift that marble. Blow out your birthday candles at the same time. Practice those things, and that's going to help to make it more natural for your body, because I guarantee what you just tried didn't feel very natural for you. The more you practice it, it starts to become second nature for your body, and then your pelvic floor gets stronger, and it also is now working with your inner core, which is going to help to protect your prolapse and help you lift things safely, help you lift more things without putting any extra stress on your prolapse. In fact, when you're doing it properly, it's actually strengthening your pelvic floor, which will in fact help your prolapse in the end. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Put down any questions for me in the comments section. And if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about your prolapse, I do have a free prolapse webinar that goes over everything you need to know about your pelvic floor, about your prolapse, what you need to be doing, and my secret weapon for what you're missing in terms of doing your pelvic floor exercises.